Hello, my name is Shayna Mace, and I'm editorial director with Brava magazine. Thank you for joining us for today's lively discussion on how to navigate the intricate dance between money and relationships. Amy Crowe will share her insights and strategies to help you confidently navigate the financial challenges that impact our daily interactions with loved ones. You'll gain valuable tools and expert tips to transform tough money talks into productive and positive conversations. By the end of this hour, you'll feel empowered and ready to approach financial discussions with ease and clarity. Our panelists today include Amy Crowe, Financial Education Specialist with Summit Credit Union. Hello, Amy.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Thank you. We were supposed to have Myra McNair with us today as well, as you see on the screen. She came down with an illness, so we miss you, Myra.
Miss you.
Yeah. So let's get to it. Amy, first of all, let's start with why this topic is so important to women. Summit is very focused on empowering women with financial knowledge and strategies, and there's an important reason for this. Summit talks a lot about it in many of the pieces that you've done with Brava. According to the Center for American Progress and the U.S. Department of Labor, respectively, women have up to 1.6 million less than men in retirement savings and are 43% more likely to live in poverty in retirement. These numbers are staggering, but a great place to start is by talking more about money and seeking guidance for an action plan. How do you recommend that we can kickstart our financial journey to reduce debt and save more at the same time?
I am so excited to have this conversation with you. So I'll start off with 3 tips right away, and then I know we're going to get into some of the nitty-gritty of it all. The first one that we need to remember is find our resources. A lot of times we don't reach out to the people who we really need to reach out to because there's barriers in our mindsets thinking that we're not enough or we're not smart enough or all of those types of things. So, or we're just scared that people might think we're dumb. So reach out to the resources that will be able to help you learn more about money. The second one is we really need to have concrete financial goals. And I'm not talking about like, I'm gonna save some money, I'm gonna pay off my debt. We're gonna get into this in a little bit, but it really is about setting measurable and smart goals, not only for your savings, but also your debt. One of the things that we see a lot when we are working in the space of personal finance or financial literacy is people think that they need to pay off their debt first and save second. You can do it at the same time. There's a balance that needs to be had, or you're going to be this hamster on a wheel and you're continually going to be in this cycle of debt that you're unable to break. So we really need to make sure that we have a balance between the savings and the debt reduction goals. And the third is going to be taking action. A lot of us are in the mental load paralysis as a woman, all right? I think all of you probably have been there. And we just take on so much, and we are the person who thinks about everything that everybody else has to worry about, right? Mm-hmm. And sometimes we don't focus on ourselves. And so it's the small steps. What's one thing I can do today? I'm going to download my retirement app on my phone. If you don't already have it there, it is the best thing ever. You don't have to look at it every day, but your retirement balance will be at your fingertips on an app. Because how many of you spend time on your phones every day? Right? Raise your hand. Yeah, we're always on our phones. So instead of going to Facebook or Instagram or the social media apps, how about we start going to our money apps more often to educate ourselves about where our money is. So when we're thinking about those small actions, that would be the very first thing I would share with you, is to look at the resources and be able to use those and set actionable goals.
I love that because people sometimes need that tangible thing, right? Yeah. That downloaded app or something like that. So that what we're talking about is these action steps. Those can be the building blocks in growing confidence about our finances and in turn guide what our talk today is all about: money and relationships. So why do you think money can be a sensitive topic within our relationships with friends, with family? And from your experience, what can we do to reduce the anxiety about thinking and talking about money with friends and family?
Gosh, I think the very first thing is that money has been in our culture a taboo topic. We're not supposed to be talking about how much we make. We're not supposed to be talking about whether or not we're in debt. We're not supposed to be, gosh forbid, talk about how much money is in our savings account. That is generational, cultural obstacles that we have in our society that actually creates this embarrassment, this sense of I'm not enough with people, and it really can create this stress and anxiety that actually doesn't need to be there if we're just more open and honest about it. And I think a lot of times it's really important for us to look back into our history. I'm 50 years old. In 1974, okay? 50 years ago, we first, as a woman, had the ability to get our own checkbook and to be able to sign on a loan document by ourselves without a man. So when we're talking about these relationships, I want to frame this by saying, you know, your mom's checkbook or your grandma's checkbook are completely different than your checkbook and how you manage it and how you think about it. So when we think about money being a taboo topic, we hold it all in ourselves. We create that stress, we create that anxiety, and then we have the generations of what has been put upon us as a woman, but then whoever our partner is has things put upon them from their culture and their upbringing as well. And so when you're trying to bring those two things together, they're going to clash. And that's where a lot of stress and anxiety comes into place, because as women, we're people pleasers, right? So we don't want to rock the boat. Well, when it comes to money, sometimes I think we need to rock the boat. And we really need to stand up for ourselves and learn to be better negotiators and learn to be better communicators, irregardless of whether or not that person that we're communicating with is willing to be accepting of that type of communication.
Yeah, I mean, that's why today's talk is so important, is just because there is a lot more behind money. It's a loaded topic, as we're talking about.
Yeah.
So that's what we're trying to dig into today. So I'm glad that we're kind of setting this up to then take the topic a little bit further.
Yeah.
So Summit marked the 15th anniversary of Project Money. We talked a little about this before our talk today. It's groundbreaking financial education program. Can you explain what Project Money is and how it helps clients dig into one of the key areas we all experience when talking about money and relationships, exploring our thoughts and beliefs about money?
Yeah, so Project Money was something we created now 16 seasons ago. I've had the pleasure and the honor to co-produce that program for a very long time, and it is literally, I'm so grateful to see the people who have been willing to put themselves forward to meet with a financial coach for 9 months of their lives, once a month, to work on their finances, to dramatically change them. So they're paired with a financial coach from Summit. That financial coach gets them in May and starts talking about their finances and starts figuring out, you know, what are some of the barriers and what are their goals and dreams. They work with them on those goals and dreams throughout the entire 9 months, and then by January, they are set on a path to do their next step in their financial goals. And of course, there's $10,000 on the line. So every participant works and is challenging not only against themselves to save as much money, to reduce as much debt as they can possibly do with the income they have, but they're also competing against the 3 other participants or couples in the program. So whoever has the most points at the end, based on our scenarios and our data, will win the $10,000. But really what we say and what we find that our Project Money participants have found through the years is the money doesn't matter. That's in air quotes, right? Doesn't matter. It's what they've learned about their finances and about themselves and about the personal financial habit change that they have put upon themselves over the last 9 months. It's like this, it's like Weight Watchers or doing anything, an exercise routine. You have to build the habits to be able to pay attention to your day-to-day finances and to be able to look in the short term and also the long term to be able to make financial changes. And you do that with the level of accountability and vulnerability that you have by having this coach help you on this journey. They're the one who questions you. They're the one who holds you accountable. They're the one who helps you think about solutions that you haven't even thought about before because you haven't been willing to ask, or you made an assumption in your mind based on what we just talked about, generations of money, right? And you're able to then make that change, which is really cool. And over the 15 years of the program, we're in season 16 now, we have had an 56-ish, I forget if it's 56 or 60, after 15 years, participants in the program, over $250,000 in savings increase between all of them. And I think, well, actually, I think it might even be $500,000 at this point. And I think $600,000 in debt reduction. So, I mean, we're talking about amazing things that people have done. And some participants have only been able to save $1,200 in their 9 months. But the $1,200 they didn't have before.
It starts somewhere.
It starts somewhere. Yeah. And what's great is they've been able to look at their wants and their needs. They've been able to look at their financial habits. They've been able to decide what they wanted to do, that take action. They were able to look at those resources. And they were able to have hard conversations sometimes with their family and their friends and even themselves to be able to make those changes. And, you know, that's not easy. But because they were committed to that program, it really made it a lot easier for them because they made that commitment.
Yeah, you talked about a couple tangible things, and I love if you could talk a little bit more about some of the things that you have Project Money participants do, like what types of questions they need to ask themselves, what we can then take away from that.
Yeah, absolutely. I think the very first thing that we have people do, and we have them download our budget worksheet off of the Summit Credit Union website. And what's fantastic about this budget worksheet is it has a right now column and it has a future column. So you can literally rearrange and reallocate where you want to spend your money based on your financial goals. And in the latest issue of Brava, there's a whole section of advice from our financial coaches. So if you haven't gotten one or you don't have a subscription to Brava, please make sure you get that. It has fantastic information in it, specifically from our financial coaches, but I just get to share some of that with you today. So, yeah.
So when we talk about money, there's the tangible aspect of money, your paycheck, your investment accounts, things like that. But, so a lot of people might think it can seem quote unquote unemotional, but it actually can be quite emotional of a topic. And so bringing up both positive and negative feelings, you touched a little bit on this. How do you recommend we dig into this money baggage a little more in our own lives, as well as talk to family members about our money experiences?
Gosh, money is so emotional.
Yeah.
I think the very first thing is to be aware of those emotions. It's pausing, it's feeling that anxiety, it's feeling that stress. So think of the latest medical issue that you may have had or someone in your family has maybe had. What are some of the questions or concerns or worries that you might have had about the cost with healthcare? So for example, some of you might not have noticed, I'm wearing an air cast right now. I stepped in a hole and I broke my fibula. So yeah, it's okay, it's fine. But the very first time, I went to go talk to my regular doctor, and he said it was broken. And I went, how much is this going to cost me? And then I was like, oh, well, just charge me for the boot, right? Like being funny at the doctor's office. And he's like, well, I think that's free. And I'm like, oh, good, free gift with purchase. So, I was trying to make light of the situation, but I've had 15 years of Project Money to kind of desensitize myself away from the emotion. Mm-hmm. But how many of you have gotten a bill on a Friday afternoon and it's not right? Or you've overdrafted your checking account? That stress, that anxiety, that fear, that, oh my gosh, I can't solve it right now, or I can't dig into it, or we're fight or flight based in our emotions, mm-hmm. right? So when something comes at us, when something's triggering us, or a problem happens with our money, we kind of get into that fight or flight mode based on the fact that we may not feel secure enough with our money. So there's something that we talk about in the credit union a lot. It's called financial wellness. Financial wellness is the ability to handle your current obligations as well as your future obligations. And when you have financial wellness, you are more apt to be able to reduce that stress, reduce that anxiety, and reduce the emotions behind money. And that cloud of worry and anxiety is mm-hmm. lessened because you feel more comfortable. Now, I'm not talking about everybody having $1 million in your bank account or your credit union account. It really is having the safety and security to know, hey, I'm going to go check my chart and see how much this is going to cost me, or I'm going to contact the billing department at the hospital and find out how much something is going to cost me. It's pulling into those resources. It's making sure that you have money in your savings account for the deductible for your health insurance, as well as having an emergency savings account. Because that's going to create confidence, it's going to create safety and comfortability in terms of, hey, I can weather this medical challenge in my life because I have some savings, I know my resources, and I can start taking action by using those resources. So when you're thinking about how money has a lot of baggage to it, I use that medical example because it's that unexpected, fearful expense where you're not only worrying about yourself in terms of health, but you're worrying about money. And then there's a lot of generational things that come up with it too, because how did my family grow up? Did you have money, didn't you have money? How did your parents react to money? When you went shopping, were you told, we can't afford that? Or did your parents explain to you that we're saving for the vacation this summer, that's why we're not going to buy that now? So that's an example of how are we talking to our kids about money versus how were we told about money. The other thing that I love is saying, oh, save money for a rainy day. Well, what does that really mean? Like, save money in case something happens. Save money for the future. So when we're unpacking all of these different things, it's important for us to realize, especially with a relationship, where is that other person coming from? What do they believe, and what did they have for messages about money when they grew up? And that's where that conflict starts to happen, and you start to need to be able to unpack that, because there's a lot of assumptions. There's a lot of perceptions based on people's history that can trigger someone or not trigger someone when it comes to anything with money.
Yeah, thank you for talking about the emotional aspect of it, because I think that's one of the key points that we wanted to touch on today, is really talking to family members and getting granular about where they have come from in the past. That's a lot of what our guide talks about in the September-October issue as well. So thank you for addressing that, which that does feed into our next topic area of getting on the same page with loved ones about money. So after we've discussed with loved ones what's behind our money experiences and feelings, how do we level set with partners, children, other loved ones on your financial situation and goals so that everybody can feel involved in what's going on?
Yeah, we always talk, or we joke about how you should go to a really busy restaurant whenever you talk about money in case the voices start getting raised. Just saying, no one can hear you then. But it is hard to have those conversations, and when to have those conversations.
Yeah.
So there's two different times that people can have those conversations. Is one, set a designated time, money Mondays, Fridays, Saturday mornings, Sunday mornings. Commit to like a half hour, and if it turns into a longer conversation, turns into a longer conversation. With your kids, it can be with teachable moments, okay, when they have a case of the gimmies. I don't know if anybody's ever read the book, The Berenstain Bears Case of the Gimmies. It is one of my favorite little kid books ever. But when they have a case of the gimmies in the store, resetting expectations, but telling them why you're resetting those expectations, which gets into the goals. So one of the things that I loved about Project Money is I hear all these great stories from our financial coaches, and there was my favorite one. Coach Chris told me that her family could not get on the same page. They actually bought her a referee's jersey, and I said, why did they spend money on that? And then it was true, but they thought it was super funny, and they wanted her to wear it every single time that they had a coaching appointment, right? Well, what Chris did to get them on the same page is she had them take two chairs like this, sit back to back with pens and paper. And she had Nikki and Troy write out all of their wishes, dreams, and financial goals. And when they were finished this was during a coaching session. And then when they were finished, she had them come back and in a non-judgmental way, without tone, which is also really important when it comes to money, talk about their goals. And they had 4 or 5 common goals. And Coach Chris said, okay, let's write these goals down and let's make them very specific. They each had individual goals. Let's write these down and make them very specific. Specific goals is a SMART goal that we might hear about in business or in school, right? It has to be measurable, it has to be realistic, attainable, all of those types of things. So a SMART goal when it comes with money is I'm gonna save $50 every time I get paid. I'm gonna automatically transfer that into a savings account through my mobile app, or it's gonna just be set up to go and go and go, right? And then on this day, I'll have this much amount of money, and I'm gonna check that app, and I will be able to then spend that money because I have that money in my savings, like if you're going on vacation or something like that. What's important when you're talking about partnerships and money and taboo topics and digging into the history, right? Some people are gonna feel entitled to have their own money because of cultural upbringing, right? His money, her money. Or they might say, well, I'll take care of the mortgage and the things with the house and you take care of everything else. That creates an inequality potentially because here's what we know about women. Women are making 53 to 83 cents on the dollar compared to a white man when it comes to income. But we're the ones who make all of the spending decisions and have the majority of the credit card debt based on family needs, okay? Because we take out the credit cards to get the cash, to be able to get the bonuses, to be able to save more money. So that you see where there's starting to be some differences there, and that creates the stress, that creates the anxiety. And why do we do that? Because we're women who want to take care of our families. But when we don't talk with our spouses or our partners about the money that we're actually putting on our credit cards, then we're trying to pay it off with our incomes, right? And this is kind of what was happening with Nikki and Troy, is they had separate money and they needed to put it together and both contribute to that goal fund that helped them achieve their financial goals together. Then they could decide between the two goals, are they both going to contribute to both of their individual goals? She was going to help him with his individual goal, he was going to help her with her individual goal, or were they just going to take it out of their paychecks that way? So when you think about goals, when you think about partnering together to achieve common family goals, it's a huge discussion as to who's going to do what. It's not just he's going to have the home improvement cards and you're going to have all the store cards. It really is thinking about how collaboratively and I'm going to say equitable versus fair, okay, because of the financial situations that we're in. So that's kind of one of the first ones, is setting specific goals, having no judgment zones, right? Well, I take care of this or I do this, right? Let's look at it as being a CEO and a CFO of your household. Let's make it a business. Let's take some of that emotion out of it, right? Especially if you're both in the business world. Let's start thinking about this as more of, hey, we're in this together. Let's manage our finances together, and then we can be more successful. Some of the things, too, that I wanted to share with you is talking about priorities. You can have your priorities, they can have their priorities, but until you actually get a calendar, figure out how much money you have by using that budget worksheet, creating different scenarios, you're not really going to know what the priorities are, because you're just saying, oh, this is a priority, this is a priority, I think this is a priority. Remember what I said before, you can save and reduce that at the same time. You just have to figure out the balance between it and then know that end time on when you're going to reach those goals. So it is doing the math, it is figuring it out based on a calendar, how long something's going to take you. It's using your resources, and it's being able to have those hard conversations without the judgment in tone in your voice.
So follow-up question to this, because, you know, we're working with family and friends here. Sometimes it can be a little tricky with money. A lot of people may meet this resistance to getting on board with financial goals that you just referred to. Is there anything you wanted to add on how to get family members to meet in the middle to avoid that conflict?
It's a hard one, and I wish Myra was here to talk more about it, because she really, really is the expert. What I can tell you based on our experience from Project Money is the resistance comes when you have a third party talking with you, whether it is a financial coach, whether it is a financial planner talking to you about your retirement, whether it is potentially a family member. Let's just talk about, for example, parents who are maybe needing some help with their finances, having all of the brothers and sisters together and start having a conversation, which in itself is a whole nother seminar that we'll talk about later. No, I'm just kidding. But it really is acknowledging, I think, everyone's perspective, understanding where they're coming from, taking really small steps together, understanding what those priorities are, when it comes to saving, when it comes to investing, but really getting that third party involved with that resistance is going to be helpful, because that third party is going to be able to share factual information based on your current financial situation, because they're looking at it, and they're not in it to either one of you, right? They're able to kind of maybe say words or ask questions that get you thinking. And with our Project Money participants, a lot of times when people weren't on the same page, they would just sit there and stare at their coach. And their coach would stare back until someone would start talking about money. And so that's one of the big things is I think get a third party to be able to help you work through those things. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Well, now that we've talked a little bit about kind of the background, removing obstacles, resistance that can get in the way of accomplishing those money goals, how can we take specific action once we have created those solid money goals, such as you talked about? What are the priorities? What do we need to be saving for? What are we looking toward the future for?
Creating an Excel spreadsheet, a Google spreadsheet, using our budget worksheet is a really great way, but it is looking at now, it is looking at the future, and then reallocating everything. And that's going to take some time, and it's going to get frustrating, and you're going to get frustrated with it, but it's one of those things where it needs to be done because it's going to help you work on your financial goals. I would also say that looking at your employee benefits from their perspective and your perspective, and figuring out how you can utilize those employee benefits to the best of your family's ability is going to be really important. There's a lot of times when you can use tax advantage accounts, making sure that as a woman, you are contributing as much money as you possibly can to your retirement account, that you're not self-sacrificing your retirement to pay off your credit card debt because someone else, you're not on the same page with that credit card debt. It's understanding that you need to set yourself up for success. And I think mentally that's really hard for us because we're caregivers and we're people pleasers. But I would say that the retirement is so, so important. Start with that first. Then look at what you want to be saving, and then look at your bills. And that's counterintuitive to what we've always been taught about. But here's the thing. This is not, when you're creating a budget, it is not set in stone. You can play around with it. And so when you're figuring it out, that's why I want you to do the savings first. And then come down to see, okay, I do my savings, I do my bills, and then what's left over. How many of you just spend what's in your checking account, and when it's done, right? And then you start using credit cards potentially, or you're dipping into your savings. So I want you to think differently about how you organize your finances, because the better ways that you have your finances organized and the more ways you can visually display all of the financials that you have going on for both parties, that's going to be creating for you less stress, less anxiety. So a couple of things I want to make sure that you have in your budgets. Emergency savings, your healthcare deductibles. So you take those two things, you divide them by however many months you are going to, or paychecks you have per year. That's how much money you should put into the budget worksheet right off the bat. Now that might change based on your financial situation, but let's just work on that number. Let's just see where that goes. This is an experiment, okay? The second one is I want you to absolutely have fun money. I want you to have an allowance. Well, one thing we have at Summit Credit Union that's super fun that I have loved over the years, and our Project Money participants have really found this to be so key with their relationships, okay? Multiple savings accounts under the same account number. And my husband has his golf account, I have my clothing account, and I can't tell him how to use his golf account, he can't tell me how to use my clothing account. Now that's very stereotypical, right? I could have a golf account, he could have a clothing account. Well, he does have a clothing account, but I'm just using that as an example, right? I have a craft account. So it's making sure that we know, here's the allocated amount of money that I get to spend on this, and you can't judge me for this, right? Now it's getting to the holiday season, and Amazon's been coming to the door quite frequently. But that is okay, because he can see what I'm spending, right? Now for people who don't have the luxury of having somebody being on the same page with them, that's where it gets really hard when you're talking about goals and priorities. Yeah. And I want to just bring it down for just a second. Sometimes when you're thinking about goals, you have to create your own budget based on what that person is willing to be able to share with you in terms of their finances. Because not everyone's going to have that partner that allows you to be able to commingle. I'm not saying everything, I'm just saying some things. And that's when it's best to get opinions by those experts and use those resources yourself to the very best of your ability, irregardless of whether or not that person is going to be on the same page with you or not.
Yeah, I can testify to that's how my husband and I do things too, is we have our own separate accounts as well for fun things that we would like to purchase, and I feel like it works great for us, so that idea.
It takes the stress and anxiety out of it. It takes the judgment out of it.
Yeah.
And that residual judgment about money is so detrimental to our mindsets. And it doesn't need to be there when we set ourselves up for success by having goals, conversations, and being able to have our account structured so that it helps us.
And it's empowering because it is your money that you have rightfully earned, whether you're a stay-at-home mom or working full-time. You are contributing. It is money that you are rightfully allowed to spend or save or do whatever you want. So, it's empowering in that respect. But we are talking a little bit, did you want to add something?
I did, but I can wait.
Okay, well, we talked about the limits and boundaries. So setting limits and boundaries in a budget can sometimes, we think it can be empowering rather than limiting. Did you want to talk a little about that as well?
Oh my gosh, we just talked about it. It's like we feel so good to have the money that we don't feel like anybody can be, like, you can't spend your money on that, right? But I think boundaries also help set accountability in a relationship. They can tell you, hey, we committed not to going out, so we're gonna have ham and cheese, grilled cheese sandwiches and some tomato soup. Or, you know, it's starting to be like, how are we collaboratively moving forward? Can the other person go grocery shopping so that they can understand how much it really costs? How can you switch roles sometimes with your finances to really get them to see the entire picture of the stress and anxiety that you're under? One time I was talking to one of my friends, and, well, she's an acquaintance, I'm not gonna say she's a friend. And she said, yeah, I have a great spreadsheet that I give my husband every single month, but I cheat the numbers. And I went, oh my goodness. She's like, yeah, I don't want him to know how much money I'm spending on the girls. Now, these people were in decked out, all high-end clothing. I'm like, how does he not know that that's what you're doing? But it was so interesting because she was lying to him about the money that she was spending. And that just can open up a whole lot of stress, emotions, things down the pike, anger with him finding out that, you know, all of these types of things. So it can be really hard when you're in a hard financial situation and you feel stuck, but sometimes it's really important, like I said, to get that third party to make sure that you are setting those boundaries for yourself when it comes to budgeting, because you're actually hurting yourself if you're not. You're spending more than you make. And that's gonna be hurting you. That's gonna be creating that stress. That's gonna be creating that anxiety. The more you know about setting boundaries, changing your mindset in terms of where can I tell myself I'm gonna stop spending? That's when budgets are really important. I'm only gonna spend this much grocery shopping, and I'm gonna make a challenge. It's gonna be a game to see how I can do this and if I can do it. And then if you successfully do it, then you feel really great about it. And what's super cool is if you can have money left over after that 2-week time period, and you can actually put that in a savings account because it's extra money. Nikki of Nikki and Troy with the referee jersey called it her sweep money because she swept it like a broom into her savings account because she worked really hard and Troy worked really hard not to spend any money over that 2-week time period that they didn't absolutely need. And that was them working collaboratively together, not just one of them working on those financial goals, because they were holding each other accountable and saying, yeah, let's not do that. Or let's just have the pizza and salad tonight versus going out to get the Friday fish fry. Or let's not get drinks at the Friday fish fry, let's just go out to dinner. Or let's not have dessert, or all of those types of things. It's finding the little things that you can cut back on collaboratively as a couple to save even more money to reach your financial goals. What I was gonna say about the stay-at-home moms, which I wanna make sure that everybody understands, because we take ourselves out of the workforce to care for our kids, because we take jobs that are often paid less than, because we want the flexibility to go get our kids from school if they are sick, right? Or take them to the games, and so we work part-time instead of full-time. We're not contributing as much into Social Security. The average amount of a woman who is retired is going to get $1,200 to $1,500 in Social Security per month. Who can live on that in this day and age? My grandma, she is 104 years old. If her daughter hadn't passed away of cancer 4 years ago, we don't know what we would be doing with grandma right now, because she was almost out of money until she got the money from her daughter's life insurance policy, because she lived to 100, well, she's almost 105. She'll be 105 in January. And so it's those scary types of things. We can't live on $1,200 a month from Social Security. We have to have retirement. So if you're not contributing at least 5% into your retirement plan at work or into an individual retirement account outside of your employer, please make sure you're finding money in your budget to be able to do that. Talk with a financial planner, see how much you need to be able to catch up. Because we take ourselves out of the workforce, we're not getting as much Social Security. We take ourselves out of the workforce, we're not contributing for those 5 or however many years to a 401k. Grandma and mom and dad are potentially living on pensions pensions don't exist anymore. That's what's taking care of our senior citizens these days. It's the military pensions from grandma and grandpa being in World War II and in Vietnam and things like that. So society has changed and no one's going to be taking care of us. And so we really need to make sure that when we're thinking about having these relationships with our family and friends, it's making sure that our partner who's still working when we're staying at home is taking money out of their paycheck to fund our retirement. It's just not happening. I'm off my soapbox now.
Well, and Summit's already always really great about being informative about women, you know, that actually leads us into our last question before we get into the Q&A period. But, you know, on average, like you said, women live longer than men but earn and save less. Fewer women work in higher income fields and roles, and women are more likely to spend time away during earning years for caregiving. Plus, there's the pink tax, a markup on products targeted to women compared to similar products for men. So that's why we're underscoring why this is important. So you already brought up a great point about that. You did have a couple other tips that you also wanted to give on building longer term wealth for women. If we could close with that before our Q&A period.
Let's just talk a little bit about the pink tax first. Has anybody heard of the pink tax? Yes.
Shaving products are notorious for it seems like. I've noticed that a lot.
Yes, shaving products. And we have so much variety. And they have like one thing. Here's the really cool thing about men and women, okay? And this is gonna kind of frame the entire conversation like we framed the idea of what challenges we've had as women throughout the year. We think holistically. You know, of course I talked about being people pleaser, right? But we think holistically. How is this going to help and benefit my family or me? So we'll be like, this is funny. Do I want my friends to see the pumpkin spice foam hand soap on my kitchen counter, or do I want the refillable pretty little ceramic thing on my counter, right? Do I want the foam version? Do I want the gel version? Like, this is the stuff we're thinking about. Men go to Menards and literally buy the first thing they see for 99 cents. I mean, I'm really stereotyping right now, but it is the idea of the pink tax where people are making money off of us because they know we're gonna spend it. And right now with inflation, and although inflation is coming down and interest rates are coming down, okay, it's important to understand that those things can change at any given time. And when we're thinking about purchasing things and we're thinking about those budgets, this is where I'm kind of transitioning back into having those collaborative conversations. And although we think holistically and we want to have those perfect Instagram-worthy houses, it is okay to have a messy house. It is okay to buy the cheap stuff that you just put in the nice little container. Because really, what are our priorities in life? Our priorities are happiness, they're healthy, ourselves, our kids, our family, and it's being able to weather challenges, okay? So one of the things, going back to your original question, was having those conversations to be able to weather challenges together, okay? Being able to have equitable discussions about who's paying for what, no matter how you're separating your finances, if everything's pooled together or some things are pooled together or everything's separate, right? How do you make that as fair and equal as possible, knowing that we can't because we are not making as much, all of those types of things. Every single person in this room and on the video today, the video stream today, will have a different financial ability. And I recognize that and I see that. That's why going to talk to somebody, a third-party person, Summit Credit Union's financial coaches, a financial planner, getting a second opinion, just like you would get when you have a medical emergency. For example, the first time I had an x-ray, they said that it wasn't broken, and now 4 weeks later, they told me I have a broken fibula. Second opinion in medical, second opinion when it comes to finances as well. Because you know what we do, Shayna? We spend more time shopping for that pumpkin spice foam thing to put on our counter than we do looking at our retirement accounts. Isn't that crazy? So it's important to also think about our unique challenges, getting that budget worksheet, having those hard conversations, and knowing that it's a process. It is not going to be solved all at once. So take those baby steps. Have a notebook of the things that you'd like to accomplish, or have a notes on your computer, and start checking those things off as you're able to do it, just like you would in a business. Because ultimately, you all are CFOs and CEOs of your families or yourselves.
Now, I'm only bringing this up because you wanted me to remind you to talk
thank
about
you.
this, but
Yes.
one of the bigger wealth growing steps you can take, let's talk about buying a home really quick and then investing.
Buying
as
a home.
points for this.
So a couple of things for buying a home. So expensive right now to buy a house, but make sure that you have a strong down payment. Make sure that you go in and talk to a mortgage lender to get a pre-approval and figure out where you really are. I think some people feel like they're priced out of homes. That's true in some cases. In some cases, it's not. So everything you hear isn't necessarily fact for your financial situation, which is why it's really important to go and look. But definitely look into first-time homebuyer programs where you can get down payment assistance. Make sure that you have a down payment as well as a what am I going to put in my house after I buy it account, because we need the lawnmower and we're going to need the snow blower pretty soon, or at least a shovel and a rake, right? The other thing with investing, I think I've talked about this throughout, but it's also important to understand, and I've been in this business almost 30 years. It's kind of crazy to say that right now. But certificate rates, CD rates, money market rates are at their highest that they have been. You can earn passive income on your savings in ways that you haven't been able to do in the last 25 years. Do not have money just sitting in a savings account, not doing anything for you. Get those into certificates or money market accounts where you're going to earn more money on your money. That's going to be really important. And 5-10 years ago, we couldn't do that because of the interest rates being so low. So that's another piece of advice is really look and see where you can put your money and how you can structure that to make interest on those.
Yeah, well, thank you for mentioning CDs. Obviously, yeah, you did talk throughout as well about downloading your retirement account app on your phone and being cognizant and aware and contributing consistently to that as well. So thank you, Amy, for such an insightful discussion. I love hearing about how we can take control of our finances, plan for the future, and advocate for ourselves. Financial well-being is a priority in our coverage as well at Brava Magazine, and we feel it's such an important topic. Now that we have done our panel part, we'd love to see if our audience had any questions that Amy could answer. She has a microphone, so she'll bring it over, yeah.
I was just wondering, I feel like my husband and I are really aligned on our goals, but then when it comes to actually how to pay for something, we have just complete opposite philosophies. I like to pay in cash and he likes to do loans, even if he has the cash. And I was just wondering if you have advice on like how to navigate that.
I think the best thing that I can say is don't make the assumption that that is the correct way. Go and talk to a financial coach to see if there's other options. So if he likes to pay with cash, is he or whichever one it was, is there protection there to be able to weather a financial storm if needed? Or if it's building that back up? And then loans are really expensive right now. So how are we managing that? Is it the type of loan? Do you have a home? Can you use a home equity line of credit? Is it credit cards? Is it a personal loan? So making sure that you really understand the most affordable way, if that is the philosophy, to get cheap debt and make sure that also you're making money on your money and protecting yourself in case something were to happen. Because what we don't want to have happen is have you rely on loans because you don't have the money in the savings because you've been spending it on things. And so it also depends on how much you're actually talking about. So there's no right or wrong answer, but I think collaboratively you can start thinking and talking about what are the best options based on what's going on in the financial industry and the rates.
Hi, I want to thank Brava and Summit Credit Union. Thank you so much for your time, and all of the things that you're discussing today are really important. So Fed cutting the interest rate is great. Maybe we're going to have another one before the end of the year, not a severe, fantastic. Yes, inflation is coming down, but let's be honest.
Yeah.
Our dollars are not going as far as they used to go. So what we used to be able to do 2 years ago, we can't do now, right? Even with the goals and the priorities. Because shrinkflation is real, right? I mean, you go to the grocery store and you say, I just bought this bag of corn chips 2 days ago, two months ago, and now it's half the size it was and the price didn't change. Right? So some of the fundamentals of the economics of inflation are hitting the bottom line in those categories of expenses that we can't control.
Yeah.
So my question to you is, what do you do to try to we're not going to control that. That's not going to change for the next year or two. So what can we do when the dollar isn't going as far as it used to go, but we're still working to prioritize all of these things. So what is your advice?
Perspective is number one. I think that there's a little bit of a grieving period too, in terms of what we used to be able to do and what we're not able to do now. And there's a lot of economic factors, and so it's recognizing, and I was going to talk about shrinkflation too, so I'm glad you mentioned it. But I think it's gaining perspective as to where we are now. I think it is understanding that things are going to take longer to save for. And also, our society has been trained in instantaneous gratification. And sometimes it's okay to wait to buy bigger things versus instantly on credit. And so when we talk about that little bit of a shift in mindset for the bigger purchases, like people used to just get a new car every single time that they paid off their loan, keeping that car a little bit longer. Those are kind of the long-term things. In terms of the short-term, what can we do? Changing where you shop. Getting away from some of the brand loyalty that you currently have for short periods of time. And so we talk about the mental mindset of how to weather these types of situations in our economy. And one is understanding that what you hear in a soundbite in the media is one thing, really digging into it from a factual financial basis is another, and then applying that to your current life. So talking to financial institutions, finding out if you can refinance because rates have gone down a little bit, right? Understanding to change where you shop, making different choices, thinking about what is the biggest priority and understanding how much longer it's going to take you to do something. Maybe it's only going to take you 4 months longer. Or maybe you work even harder for a couple of weeks to save up as much money as you possibly can to put that into a savings account so you feel more safe and secure. It really is one of those things where I watch television every morning while I'm getting ready, and they talk about shrinkflation, and they talk about the holiday season coming up. But how many of us have been in a store when Christmas is out before Halloween? And then we're actually looking, like my mindset is I better go look now at the cute ornaments for Christmas or they'll be sold out before Halloween. What has our consumer-based society done to our mindsets? So it's a long answer to what you're saying, to almost an impossible problem, an impossible situation. But I would say it is absolutely about budgeting. It is absolutely about relooking at your priorities and understanding that we're going to have to wait to do some of the things that we are used to doing, and then changing our shopping habits if we at all possibly can. And then talking to somebody before you get in trouble with your money to be able to maybe stop that from happening to you. Yeah.
Okay.
It's a hard question to answer.
Yeah.
I had a question. Thank you. This has been very helpful. Just as far as like budgeting goes, how much would you say to put aside like in your savings? Like what would you recommend for savings, emergency, and then the fund money that you're talking about?
Ooh, you can Google that to Life's End and people will tell you all of their different opinions. Only you can answer that question based on your current financial situation. But what I will tell you is look at the things that you consider fun, figuring out how much those things cost, and then using that budget worksheet or an Excel doc and figuring out how many times you can do that per month based on what you have. I mean, that's really important. When you talk about how much should you have in a savings account, number one, at least $1,000 in an emergency savings account. That saved our Project Money participants and started to get them out of the cycle of debt. So the fastest you can get $1,000 into an emergency fund, the better. Most Americans can't afford a $400 medical expense or a $400 unexpected expense. That might be a windshield shattering because, you know, a rock popped up and you have to pay a $250 deductible to get your windshield fixed. It could be a copay or a co-insurance. So my recommendation would be start with $1,000 in an emergency savings, then look at that deductible and continue to add to it. Because ultimately, when you add to your savings, Shanna, you know this, you end up taking money out of it at some point, and then you're gonna have to build it back up, and it's gonna come out, and it's gonna build back up.
a cycle.
It's a cycle,
Yeah.
just like your credit card debt, right? You
Yeah.
put money on your credit card, you pay it off, right? So it's understanding that $1,000 is our base recommendation, and then really looking to see how else you can build that account. Yeah. And then, hey, if you have a 401k that offers a match, please look at that. One of the things that we've learned in our research is that women say, oh, I can't afford saving 5% of my income. Have you done the math to really figure out how much that is coming out of your paycheck pre-tax? And I'm not a tax advisor. Because when you actually look at it and wrap it into your budget, it's not that much when you think about it. And that is the most important thing, because think about this. If you're contributing 5%, your company's contributing 5%, that's 10% going into your retirement for future use.
And even if you own your own business, the Summit Guide in our September-October issue does talk about different options that you can set up on your own.
Yeah.
If you're not with an employer
Yep.
that can do that match. So check that guide out as well,
Yeah.
because there's always options as well if you
Yep.
own your own business or an entrepreneur.
Yeah.
I am keeping track of the time. I did want to ask, oh, do you have a question over there? Oh, great. Fantastic.
Yes, hi. Hi, Liz Johnson. So I'm the owner of Serenity Pet Spa. I actually had a question that relates to the one two before, and you're sitting there talking about like changing your budget and changing what you spend on. So how does that reflect to me, a small business owner? Because yes, I do, and I have been losing some clientele because they're going to try to groom their dog at home, or they need to come less often, or they're going to go to the cheaper groomer, where to me as a dog lover is going, but your poor dog, because I know the state of the untrained groomers out there, and I know that sometimes I get these dogs back a year or so later and they're traumatized. So any thoughts that you have as a small business owner on how I can survive through this inflation, where I'm like, I still want to do the best for my customer, but I still also have to pay my staff and my employees. And I, to be real brutal honest, like skipped a few paychecks for myself this year because I needed to pay my employees enough for them to be able to live.
Yeah, I'm a huge proponent of to a small business. The other thing I would recommend, because I'm not necessarily an expert in that area, is looking into the Small Business Development Center at UW. It's SBDC. They're going to have great resources. SCORE is also another fantastic resource as well. WIBIC is specifically for women. Asking them those questions, and actually they have free coaches to help you with your business from start to finish. And I've worked with them over the last however many years, just for projects that we have at the credit union, and their coaches are amazing. The other opportunity you do have too is through Madison College's Center for Entrepreneurship as well. So asking those questions, looking at some webinars, and then I would also say, you know your business really well, you know your clientele, encouraging them, and then sharing with them, you know, what can happen if they don't, you know, have their dog go to a professional groomer. That might be something that you could do in any communications that you have with them as well. Yeah.
Connecting with other small business owners is great advice. I know there's a lot, we write about so many small business owners in Brava. It's a huge area of focus for us. And I know that we have a great women-owned small business community here in Madison, so I know that other women would be happy to help you, work with you, give you advice. Even if they're not in the same industry, they can probably share with what worked. But I echo, we went to the SCORE conference. We've also worked with them in Brava. Great resources, and yeah, free. So I think, we have another question.
Hi, good morning. So I'm very interested in financial coaching and financial planning for my small business and for my family. And you spoke about credit union offering that, as well as, what was the name of this other one you just spoke of? WIBIC?
WIBIC.
WIBIC.
Yeah, so SCORE, so let's talk from the business side first. SCORE, WIBIC, SBDC through UW, all of them have free coaches, business coaches that you can connect to, all three of those, okay? From a financial standpoint, Summit Credit Union has financial coaches. They are complimentary. You can meet with them once, you can meet with them a couple of times, whatever you want that to be. If you want a more structured program, we have something called the Red Shoes program, where it's a self-directed workbook with a financial coach that does provide a little bit more accountability. Again, flexible. It's not something like, you know, the 9 months that Project Money has. We will be accepting Project Money applications in January, however. But I think financial coaching provides that accountability. And so when you're looking for a coach or an advisor, make sure that you're not being charged upfront for those services. And most of the time for women, we think that financial planners are going to be charging us up front. Truthfully, my husband and I have gone to 4 financial planners in the last year just to, I wanted to say prognosticate.
Vet or try different ones.
Forecast.
Sure.
Forecast our retirement, right? Because we're both 50 years old and we figure we better do this now. And none of them charged us, but they gave us all a scenario. Of course, you know, there may be charges on the back end potentially once you get into the investments. But I would say financial coaches ask you a lot of questions. They help you critically think and problem solve. And Summit Credit Union has them at every single one of our branches. And we have virtual appointments because we know how critical people's time is. Getting to travel to a branch, sitting down with somebody, sometimes that virtual call is going to be just that quick and easy point for you. Plus we have a contact center too that will answer any quick questions as well. So I've seen the power of financial coaching to increase confidence based on feeling comfortable with the decisions that you've been able to make once you've had that knowledge through the Project Money program and what we do every day. So yeah, most credit unions will have that, but we are really good at it.
Well, we want to end on time, so I'm going to thank Amy Crowe for a wonderful discussion. We're going to thank Summit Credit Union for co-hosting this event with Brava Magazine. Thank you to our live audience and our viewers out there for joining us today as well. Don't forget that this discussion will be available to listen to and watch after this on bravamagazine.com, and a link will be sent to all registrants, so watch your email for that, please. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.